Good morning. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So this morning, we have a hybrid meeting. Bill, I understand you're online. Is that correct?
I am glad to be here.
Morning. Don't let us forget about you as in our conversations. If you have something to share or add, we'll try to remember that. And Patty is also online. Thank you, Patty, for making time to be here. I know you have other things going on.
Morning.
So, and I have another activity that I'll be headed to, depending on how long this meeting goes, and I might need to leave early. And so based on that, in the preceding week, we had determined that it might be best for Tess to chair this meeting and for the continuity of all of that. So with that, Tess, I'll turn it over to you.
Why, thank you very much.
You feel lucky?
Oh, I do, yes. All right, well, let's see here. Make sure I've got the updated agenda here.
Let me just say
first
that's
of all-
not a surprise to you.
No, it was not. Do we have anyone here, any public comment? Do we have anyone online or present?
I don't have any public comment, Tess.
Okay, great. Seeing none, we'll pass on that. First item on our agenda is the consent. Oh, pardon me, the revised agenda here. Discussion items, executive session. Wait. Is that,
No,
oh,
no,
I'm sorry,
we're on
that's the
the wrong
PFA
page.
one.
Yeah.
So that one was laid in front of me here. No, I got it. So it has not changed for the district. Nope, my apologies. I thought, geez, I don't remember having an executive session for our district.
Groundhog Day.
Yeah, okay. All right, first item is the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to consider approval of the minutes for September 23rd? That's the only item on consent.
So move.
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
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 Okay, great.
Aye.
That's
Okay.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the reminder. All right, staff and director reports. PFA meeting review. Dave, you want to handle it or you want me to?
You have surprises?
There really was. I mean, I think we can just, yeah, okay, we did not have, you guys all saw the agenda is published. We did not have an executive session. And can I say why we didn't have an executive session? Is that, yeah, okay.
Yep.
There has been no action on the building, the new building, which is what the executive session was going to be, to discuss the potential purchase of a new building. Chief, would you like to elaborate at all?
No, we're just having, our attorney Kelly Duke is just having difficulty, getting through three major issues in the contract. That ADP is, being very stringent about, so, we sent over a final draft on Thursday to give them one last opportunity, see if they're gonna change or not. So we were hoping to have something back by, yesterday by 5 o'clock, and we did not, so that's why we pulled it off the agenda. So when we actually get an agreement that we can, both live with the content of it, then we'll bring it back to the board for discussion, so.
What's the issues?
Are we supposed to discuss that? I mean, what, I'm not sure, how much do we hold for executive session versus public if it's a transaction?
I mean, it's about liability, just in general,
Okay.
yeah, for warranty and that, so.
Let's say, otherwise we can go into executive session
Yeah,
and discuss
no,
it. That's
no.
what I'm just asking. a
Just
question.
generality, so
You gonna be able to make a deal or not?
we'll find out. They got one last chance, so.
Do you want to ask more questions?
No.
Okay, all right.
I'm a deal maker. If you can make a deal, make it.
Excellent. Okay, so moving on to the other items, the main discussion item for our PFA meeting, because everything else on here is duplicative of our meeting here today, but the only other discussion items were the 2024 budget discussion. Dave raised a number of very pertinent questions. All the board members did. We appreciate it, Dave. And we got into quite a bit of detail about especially some of the long-term needs. Went on for probably 45 minutes, so I don't know if you guys have questions, or perhaps when we get to our discussion of our budget, if you want to parse it out, then we could.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
I'll just
Yeah.
quickly summarize. I feel like there are two major things that have impact on long-term budget. And one is the scraping of our buildings. I mean, we're putting in there scraping 3, 5, and 2. And we're putting in $11 million, which is probably not enough, at least for 5, we heard this morning. You know, that's almost double what we paid for 4 and 8, et cetera. So anyway, I felt like we needed to have some real, the board, I felt, needs to have some information about why would we scrape versus remodel? And so conclusion on that is that there was a lot of good discussion about why. I mean, the buildings are 50, 60 years old. They don't need, things have changed, size of the fire engines, requirements for size of the building, et cetera. And the bottom line is that Andy and Mark and architects will be coming to the board with alternatives before we ever start building. And once we engage an architect, we'll look at the alternatives of rebuilding additions or remodeling versus scraping. So we'll have a real good thorough analysis of why we're doing that. And the second major thing I brought up is this, and I know you guys have all looked at this in the budget, that all of our fire engines now, we've changed the schedule on a replacement. We've basically cut it in half. And I think the board needs to understand what the rationale is and why we're doing that. And you know, go back to, and I don't know, Mike, I know will remember this, but we had at one time, we had this great system of, we had a engine that would wear out, the engine would go or a transmission would be going. Okay, so we take the truck body off and put it on a new truck body. It's called a glide. And I guess we can't do that anymore, which is just counterintuitive to me, but NFPA has made this decision that you can't do it. So that's a little bit off the subject, but that leads into, okay, now we've cut the life of our projects, and now we're saying, oh, maybe we won't use an engine for 20 years, it's gonna only be 10 years. So it's just, we need to understand why and what the rationale is around that. Derek's going to bring some of that back to us. And certainly before we buy another engine, so we have an understanding of that, because both of those things have a major impact on our short-term budget as well as certainly our long-term budget. So, sorry.
No, that's
Go.
perfect. No.
But I think we
Yeah,
need to
it's important.
yeah.
Dave, can I just make a comment?
Go ahead.
Yeah, you know, and last month I'd asked for, you know, just looking at really the total picture of that, because if you're talking about cutting it in half, you're really not looking at the entire life cycle of that unit. And that's specifically what I'd like to see, because if it comes offline in 10 years, it has another 10 years of potential reserve status and other things. And so just having that well detailed, I think, brought to us is going to make a lot of sense. Thank you.
Great. And in tandem with that, another piece of information that I was unaware of because of being new to the PFA board is there is a facilities audit from 2022 that we'll get the information on, or I'll get it. We can pass it on to the district board too, if you're interested, that gets into more detail about the whole assessment of our various buildings and their needs, and sort of puts it all in more context. And so that audit exists and helps drive that. And Derek was explaining the standards of cover and how that drives, you know, when we do which and how we have to think about it on a timeline. So I'm looking forward to seeing that.
You know, and I think the other thing that I'll just share as that information starts coming out, I really feel like those plans in terms of capital investments or the life cycle plans, right? I mean, they're not really, it's not really a toggle, right? It's not, is it 20 years or is it 10 years? I mean, it could be 18 years or it could be 12 or it could be 10. And I think I would be really curious to sort of see or sort of understand the what if scenario that, you know, in a perfect world, maybe it is 10, but gosh, if budgets are tight, you know, maybe we can do it for 13 or 14 and, you know, or, you know, same
Or
thing
20.
or 20,
That's what
right? I
we're
mean,
doing
and
now.
again, the comparison that I think of, just because it's my profession, is in pavement maintenance, right? I mean, you can maintain your pavement after 10 years in a perfect world, but you can do it after 15 or 16 or 18, you know, without a huge issue. If you do it after 30, you know, you're in a world of hurt because you're gonna have to rebuild the whole thing. And so there's sort of a tipping point in there somewhere. It's a really big gray area. And I think that's maybe what I don't understand as well with PFA facilities is where's the gray area and where can we sort of find the sweet spot between making sure that we're adequately resourced and maintained, but being really conscious of the needs, especially as those change.
Yeah, and you know, Vandy was explaining how we've frankly gotten behind that curve because we've been putting off maintenance. So
Right.
we've tipped over where,
Already.
yeah, in some places.
Right.
So,
And then it gets more expensive.
yeah,
So you have to
right,
be careful.
right. Right, Vandy? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, so when you fall behind and take care of the infrastructure,
Mhm.
it exponentially gets
Then it
worse,
goes- yeah,
right?
Then it goes down fast.
Correct. So we're really playing catch up. And I was explaining, so 11 years ago, the budget to take care of our facilities was $35,000 a year. And that was everything. That was so all maintenance, if it needed a refrigerator. So we really, but we did it and how that was before my time. It's pretty impressive. They were able to not lay anybody off from 2008 to 2012. And the work that was done by the board and the staff to make sure that we didn't lose people was fantastic. But on the backside of that, we let our facilities degrade a bit. And so now we're really trying to catch that up. So a lot of even just concrete, I mean, if you think of that, so we're driving these big heavy apparatus on the concrete, it cracks up, it breaks, it spalls, and you got to replace it. So to replace concrete, you know, this year we did $100,000 worth of it, and we just hit the bad spots. But now we have, you know, the training center is going to take probably, when we figure, $400,000 worth of concrete.
It's the same thing with the apparatus too. So that's like a suggested life. Like if it's station 7, one of our slowest stations, that could have a life of 12 to 13 years based on utilization, but engine 5 and 1 who are like the highest in 4, those have a shorter life. And on top of it, we're dealing with, you know, 2 years ago, you'd order an engine, you'd have it 9 months. Now it's 2.5 years and the ladder is almost 3 years. So like having a plan for all that has changed the outlook too. So it's not like a hard and fast, like that's a timeline. That's how we budget. And based on the piece of equipment and the condition it's in, do you stretch it out or is it something that the expenses are so high in maintenance that you want to sell it?
And an engine's $1 million, over $1 million for one engine, small engine.
So that was the gist of our discussion again. And also staff said because of the election being November 3rd, and then our next meeting is not too much after, we're not gonna actually do the budget approval till December.
Correct.
So if we want to have more discussion as the district board about the PFA budget or more information, certainly we could do that next month as well. That was really the highlights. Anything else on the meeting that was, I think all the rest of the items will be covering.
Thank you.
We'll be covering on our own here.
We did point out, and I'm sure you all noticed on that chart that shows the call ratio between the district and the city and the contribution ratio. So even, well, I'm sure we'll get into this later too, but it's 24%. without making that other change. I mean, I guess it'd be 25 if we change the mill levy. Something like that. So that's a significant change from where we've been in the past. We've never been that high. We've always bounced around the 80-20.
Okay. Senior leadership update.
All right, first thing, smoke alarm installation and carbon monoxide, between the previous, trailer, our mobile home park in Collins Air, we installed over 269 units. Had great feedback from all the residents there, really developing those relationships. One thing that really benefits us, our outreach and education team, we have 2 bilingual, speakers. So they both speak Spanish, which is a huge help because they're predominantly non-English speaking areas that we're able to target. This last time we partnered with the Air Force Academy cadets and CSU and really had a great turnout of almost 50 people there canvassing the neighborhood. So just completed Battalion Chief Assessment Center on Thursday. We'll be having a list probably coming out next week for the promotional piece. And second round of firefighter interviews were completed. We have a list established here for spring recruit class. Fire prevention week's ongoing. A lot of activity happened. October 28th, we're having an open house at Station 3. You're all welcome to come from 10 to 1. Last year, we had great turnout from the community there. So it's a nice area with a beautiful park there. Completed all the biannual conversations with the chief for every single fire station shift and headquarters. A lot of great feedback and just conveying the message where we're at on strategic plan initiatives that we're working on. And then just basically they answer any questions they have. So they have a clear understanding and those are always enjoyable. I met with U.S. Senator Michael Bennett, just an update on what's going on legislatively and any possible grant funding. The 2 new red engines went into service October 13th. We did it despite it was Friday the 13th. Everything went well. So then we had 2 people that left our organization last week. So our GIS analyst Laura Robinson, Assistant Fire Marshal Sarah Carter, they both took other jobs and we're working on getting those positions posted to get those filled right away. Other than that, one other thing, we did get a purchase order issued for the 911 memorial. So that's gonna begin progress. They're gonna start staging equipment probably in the next week or 2 at Station 3 so they can start construction. So pretty excited about that.
How are they on the fundraising? Did they hit the goal?
We have met our goal. We just need a little extra for some other things, but we've met the point to where we can actually start construction. So yes.
Were we able to take advantage of that initial offer of in-kind
We did.
contract work?
No one gave in kind, but each contractor knocked some money off their initial quote as a donation. So we didn't get any in kind work though.
No
So
in-kind, okay.
no.
Okay.
Any questions for Chief? All right, East Mulberry annexation update. Patty?
Hi, good morning. I saw this come across my desk as an update. I think it was September 28th. And so I just wanted to put this before you. I did not attend the meeting, but I intend to. I think they have one coming up here, I think next week, but I have to double check my calendar. So this is just a boilerplate item. As I see things come across, want to put it before you. There's no action right now, but this will be a consideration when you guys consider budget of this potential property loss. Not all at once, but it is, $1.8 million of the district budget based on 2022 assessments. And the reason why I did that is because we don't have our 23 final certified. So right now, this is the current number. But this is, I just think, 24% overall district budget. I just want that to, be before you as you're considering some budget options that this would have a significant impact.
So, thank you.
Everybody read the whole thing?
Were there questions for Patty on it or anything? Any comments? Bill?
No, I read the last one and then did my best to get through this one. They've got an amazing team working on this. I appreciate the pace. That it's not, as just headstrong going into plan A, whatever that became. They're really working this. So No, appreciate their work.
Great. Well, you know, one thing that I noticed on the plan, I kind of did, I think like most of us, it was like 200 pages, so I'm not sure any of us probably read it cover to cover, but one thing that I was happy to see is they've identified this threshold process. And I printed out this one page because once they identify a threshold that would raise the question about an annexation of part of it, then they have a 6-month outreach process. And then it goes to city council for discussion. So I think we're gonna have plenty of time to think about the financial impact as each of these phases comes before. It sounds like they're being very thoughtful. I don't think we're gonna wake up tomorrow and find out that 5% of the district budget is gonna be annexed into the city of Fort Collins, you know.
And it's gonna be very expensive. So I think part of the reason, like that whole threshold, the elections coming up, so the council demographics will change,
Right?
potentially change, and then whether this is a priority and just how that's set aside. And part of this discussion we're having with the IGA review. So like if, you know, if the city does annex, how do they make the district whole? So that's part of all those discussions we're having, doing the whole review of the IGA, so.
Yeah, so if they annex, then our revenue allocation formula would probably be discussed.
Yeah, talking
Adjusted.
with Travis, who's the CFO, he said we would have to do something to make that up. So just not like they're gonna take it away. Because like big thing with the police, they're talking about hiring like 18 more officers, but we're already responding there. It's already in our district. So it's like, what's that? You can't expect the same level of service and then you take the funds away that fund that service. So it's like, but that's all the discussions and they're definitely open to that because they understand the impacts on PFA and the district whole.
Great.
I was happy to see that that was recognized in that, right, in the plan or whatever you
So
call
we
it.
brought that up right when
Right,
they
it was,
started.
it was in there, so that's good.
Yes.
I thought
Yep.
that was good.
One of the things that I'm sort of curious about is when we talk about the 24% of the district's property tax revenue being in that area, I'd be curious to know what percent of the calls are in that area. Right?
Percent of what calls?
Of PFA calls, right? I
Of
mean,
PFA.
when we sort of think about this 80-20, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of, you know, what the contribution is for the funding, but also what, you know, what the percent of calls is.
That's a good
It's like, we're
question.
gonna lose money, you know, but as that gets annexed, you know, those,
How will that
those
shift?
calls, right, are also gonna shift the percentage of calls technically that are in the city or
Yeah.
in the district. And so, there's a little bit of a balance. I'm guessing there's more loss of money than there is loss of
There's a
calls.
lot of calls there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, I know certainly for the sheriff, there's a ton of calls out there and maybe you guys are responding to those as well,
Yeah,
but
most of them.
yeah, so.
It
So I
sounded,
think there's a balance there too, but I, you know, and just like everyone else, right, we'll just have to sort of be aware of that and walk our way through it.
we'll see what
Were
the
you able
future,
to, sorry.
I was just gonna say, we'll see what future council members decide are their priority and how they want to approach it. You know,
Yeah.
if they want to start west and move east, which is one thing I saw, or hit the corridor and the aesthetics first. I mean, I don't know what they'll decide. They have a lot to balance.
Were you able to pull that out
Oh,
by
yeah.
area?
Yeah, no, we can get that.
When we had Laura, we could do it right away, right?
Oh, Haley can do that.
Yeah.
Haley can do it?
So,
Okay,
yeah.
okay, Haley.
Won't be as pretty.
Any other questions on that item, East Mulberry annexation update or comments?
I still haven't figured out why they want to do it. Just-
Oh, Bill, well, I can answer that, Mike, is because 3 years ago, the city created an enclave and by their city ordinance, they're allowed to. So that's the number one reason is that it's after 3 years, it's by ordinance that they annex.
They're taking on a lot of liability there for very little gain.
Yeah, and they do have a lot of negotiations to do with the county, because the county hasn't even met their standards in the county, you know, as far as drainage and
Yeah.
frontage roads.
Streets,
But
yeah.
the other big piece is like, goes back to the quality of life and the gateway to Fort Collins, and that's not the most aesthetically pleasing route coming into Fort
Wonder what they're
Collins.
gonna do to change that.
Well, I mean, like, in the plan, they're talking some pretty drastic changes, like
Yeah.
sidewalks, new roads, frontage
We're
roads.
paying for that.
Well,
That's
exactly.
the problem.
That's the
Therein
gap.
lies the issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Patty, they're not required to annex just because there's an enclave. They just have the ability, right?
That's, well, I think, you know what, Dave, I'm gonna have to get back to you. For some reason, I thought that, that they do. It's just a matter of timing.
You have
Right.
the ability to do it without consent of the
Without
landowners.
consent.
Yes, so
Yes.
you can be an enclave forever, but the city can come do it by force.
But they don't have to.
Well, they can do it by force after 3 years, and so the clock started
Right.
a couple of years ago, and so now they're in a position where they could do it, and the question is should they?
Yeah, they're not
Or
required
will
to
they?
though.
But they're not
Yeah.
required to.
No.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
The planning department, I mean, a little bit to your question, and I'll put on my former city of Fort Collins employee hat. The planning director 20 years ago was so excited about closing that enclave for all the reasons of the aesthetics, and he's long been moved on to another place, but I think, you know, it's always been a long-term vision for city leadership that whole corridor just be brought up to a higher standard, just like South College, you know, when we did the Southwest annexation all those years ago. So I think some of it is just philosophical.
Control, right? Control
Yeah,
and
control.
aesthetics.
Yeah. Okay, I'll move on to discussion items. The first discussion item is the consideration to approve the third quarter financial statement and revenue reports, page 227.
Oh, thank you. Wow, what a good news story for the district. They are really, really staying healthy financially. One of the examples is the cost savings that you gave staff direction for PFA one-time contribution of the $225,000 that we will talk about on budget. Year-to-date interest is about $58,000 more than what we expected, just due to the high interest of when we did our budget last year. That just interest rates were really sitting nice on that pad there. We've collected over 98% of our budgeted revenue, and our expenses are only at 24%. Really, that cancellation of the election, the piggybacking for the request proposal for the fire impact nexus study, and that interest. So I think we're in a really good position. I'm going to ask for the next agenda item for the board to consider $100,000 transfer from the fiduciary fund into an investment. That was a recommendation from the auditor. And I really don't have any noteworthy expenses. They're all tracking as normal. For the fire impact, I do have an update that we met with the vendor that is doing our Nexus study. They are prepared to present that report to you in November. And as expected, there are going to be some increases of what we've seen. But I would just ask the board to consider not getting behind. The city is also planning on approving their Nexus study. And we don't want that report, we don't want to be skewed. We want to be tracking and not be behind the ball. We will communicate any type of increase before there's any implementation to builders. We'll post it on our website and do the normal approval process when it comes to the final Nexus study approval. But I just wanted to plant that seed that, as everything else, it's going to increase our fees a little bit. Other than that, I don't have any noteworthy items on the financial statements. I will coordinate a time to review last month with Dave, since I was unexpectedly being out of town, but looking for a motion to approve unless there's questions.
Questions for Patty? Comments?
I'll make a motion to approve the third quarter financial statement and revenue report.
Second.
I'll say, yeah.
Bill. All right, Bill, second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, the motion is approved. All right, Patty, you were still on.
Okay.
Let's move to this next item, which is the consideration to approve resolution 2023-5 to invest $100,000 to the Colorado Surplus Asset Fund core account.
Yeah, thank you. I think as I was considering putting this on consent. But I just, paused a little bit and thought I would put it after, our financials. I'm very comfortable with recommending another $100,000 transfer from our main checking account to an investment account for the advice of, our auditor. And I'm also kind of looking to see, staff direction, if I see that, we have enough, if you're okay with me just putting us on consent moving forward until PFA does a formal request to ask for those funds. But I'm looking for a motion to approve, resolution 2305, and, we'll get that $100,000, moved over to the investment account.
Okay, great summary. Any questions for Patty? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Patty, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Do we, get off the top of your head, do you know the difference in interest rate? We're
Yeah.
getting some,
We're up in the mid fives with the core account. And I think with the first bank, we were down like below 2.
okay. Thanks.
But Dave, we can revisit that when we schedule so I can, make sure that those are accurate.
Yes, I mean, that's kind of our rationale to put it into a
Higher view.
higher yielding instrument, if you will.
Right, and remember that, the district is the fiduciary of that money. You're collecting that money on behalf of PFA. And so that was a strong recommendation from Jimmy, that we just don't have it sitting in the checking account.
Yeah. So sorry, Mike was making a motion. but I-
Mike, you have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, hearing no opposition, that's approved.
Just, do we want to talk about whether or not future transfers should be put on consent? I don't think we need to vote on that. We just need to give Patty direction.
Yeah, anybody have a strong opinion about it, one way or the other? I'm comfortable with the consent agenda.
We have questions, we pull it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, any questions we pull, that question.
Thank you for that.
That work, Patty? You have direction there?
I've got the direction. Thank you.
Okay, very good. All right, the 2024 budget. Before we get into it, there's a star on it that says board follow-up. Do we have any kind of a vote we're coming to today, or are we just discussing the details?
This is discussing the details. This was a follow-up item. I think Martina asked me to make sure that this was before the board. I think just due to the year, where it's at in the year and just the hot topic items of all this legislative issues, it just seems natural that it would be before you. Again, I am looking for direction when we get down there for a board. It was clear in September that we needed to make a decision on the $225,000 pass-through so that Haley and Kirsten knew how to do their budget. But we have another consideration, and that is adjusting our mill. As a reminder, HH is going to change when the assessors certify the assessed values to the taxing authorities. And so that's the changes that are highlighted in red on the agenda item summary, and the reason why we have a second board hearing, which is January 2nd, just not knowing if HH is going to pass, because I can't finalize budget until I get that final certification from the assessor's office. So barring HH, thank you for providing that direction of that $225,000 pass through. We also talked about setting the mills flat. Let's just say it's at our base of where it was when we went to the voters for approval of 7D. 10595 is also what is the minimum in our intergovernment agreement revenue allocation formula. So the idea of reducing it down was really kind of off the table so that we don't pierce that agreement that we have with the city forming a PFA. So if we set the mills at 10,595 and we lower the interest income, you know, some chatter of the economy next year, we might see a dip in our interest. Passing through 100% of the specific ownership tax, I'm guesstimating it's going to be about $575,000. The general property tax alone, whether the assessment rate is at 6.765 if HH fails or 6.7 if it passes, and not adjusting the mill, normal expenses, with the exception of a little bit in district management where I padded legal, not knowing about Mulberry. And our volunteer pension fund, we're looking at a contribution to PFA of $12,413,425. That number is also, because we needed something to go by, that Kirsten and Haley, Haley, you're in the room and you can speak to this, that they're using, but you do have another consideration of what you have historically done, and that is adjust your mill. So if you go to page let's see, page 237, I think Tess asked me to, you know, work up some numbers with a $600,000 single family home to see what the actual impact is to a single family residence. We used an assumed 44% increase in assessed value with Larimer County alone. And our current residential assessment rate for 2022 was at 695, and we adjusted the mill to 10,824. So what I was trying to paint a picture here is, one, the impact to a single family resident if we lower the mill from what it was in 2002 to our base, that you'll see in example A and B, that we're looking at anywhere from a $95 to $100 difference based on if HH passes or not. If we consider adjusting the mill as we have since voters approved your ability, you Gallagher-ized and your ability to adjust so that you capture what you would lose by that residential assessment rate continuing to fall, you're looking at $114 to $116 in example C and B impact to a single family resident. So that even though you'll see the county tax, there's going to be a larger impact, your line item as the district is really minimal, but it is an increase. There is an impact, and I just wanted to kind of break that down a little bit, and I hope that helps, Tess, and what you were looking for. If you scroll down just a little bit, I was just kind of brainstorming with some co-workers on what are the pros and cons of the district actually continuing to adjust that mill. One is that you're looking at the annexation of Mulberry. We're looking at what Mark, Hediger and Chief and Vandy all indicated about our construction costs for PFA. Our costs are just going up, fuel and maintenance, of just providing all of those services to the district. And what the district is receiving is pretty outstanding service, in those areas. And it's expensive to provide that cost or those services. Reminder that the district did approve voters to adjust their mill back in 2019, and you have ever since. The increased contribution, I believe, Chief and Haley, you can speak to it, I think was going to go towards capital. And I think they've detailed that there is a significant need in capital. And then also the apparatus costs, we're looking at over $1 million with a 2-year lag on those engines and apparatus. So some of the cons that I could think of was cost of living or inflation. There is an impact to taxpayers. We're all living it. district tax increase, although minimal to your property owners, to your constituents. However, I do think that we can easily justify, why we're adjusting. And then the public perception of a tax increase. I'm sure there's 1,000 other reasons in there, but that just off the top of my head, that's what I pulled together. If we consider adjusting the mill as you have, then if HH fails, your mill will then adjust to 10,995. Now I sat down with all of you as either SDA or one-on-one to show how that adjustment actually works. It's where that assessed value comes in and what you would lose. And then it's that adjustment so that you can capture the revenue based on that residential assessment rate fluctuating. If HH passes, remember your residential assessment rate further reduces. And then that's going to be a higher adjustment. And we're talking less than 0.5%. Remember, it was 0.4 or 0.46 when you saw that budget book. And then if HH passes and you choose to go ahead and accept the full adjustment to capture that amount, the mill would be set at 11,055. I am comfortable with asking direction for the board to consider an adjustment, but it's clearly up to you. And Chief, if you want to chime in about, again, the needs, that's what I would be recommending, but it's up to you.
You want to add anything before we?
I think Patty did a wonderful job just summarizing that. I mean, we talked about it in the authority meeting, just the expenses of how far we got behind, how hard it is to catch up, and our costs continue to increase just like taxpayers. So Patty did a wonderful job preparing.
And thank you, Chief. I got to say that, whether we agree or not, everyone wants lower property taxes, but as a district, your only ability to fund is tax revenue.
Right. Okay, well, let's open it up for discussion. I don't know where folks would like to start. We could talk specifically, since we're on it, about the mill levy. And maybe if there's questions related to just overall budget, wherever you guys want to start, I'll open it up. Bill, want to start with you since you're out there?
Okay.
I'll put you on the spot.
That's okay. Yeah, I think I've been consistent with, we just need to have really good information to justify if we raise that up. And I think that's part of what's being presented. I mean, there's a lot of ways the fire department can be run and funded, but ours is running at a very high level, and we want to see it sustain that way. I'm concerned about also arbitrarily raising a tax rate. So we tie what we do to outcomes and expectations, and I think we're in really good water. And that's really what I'm looking for when I assess all this.
Thank you. Other comments?
I thought a lot about this, and I think that I can understand and appreciate the need to increase the cost, but I think we're being irresponsible to raise the mill levy when the property tax, our constituents' property taxes are going to go up considerably anyway. And if we were to raise it, it would only be because we could, and I think when we got the voters to approve this, it was we were asking because we were going to have reduced revenue, and we have far from reduced revenue. We've got a tremendous increase in our revenue. So $3 million on what, 8 or something like that. I'm not sure I have the numbers exactly right, but that's a tremendous increase. And Patty, I know you've recommended we go to change the mill levy, but I don't think it's the right thing to do for our constituents. I mean, obviously, we've got a place to put the money and at least even put it in a placeholder, but so that's another 10% on 54 million, be another 500,000 roughly. I guess there's two different, 300,000 to 500,000, something like that, but I just don't think it's the right thing to do, so that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Okay, that's what we're checking in on. Mike?
No, I think that, we had to leave the status quo just like it is. We can always, find a use for that money, and, Tinmouth area is really driving a lot of the economy around here, I'll tell you, it's, the foreseeable future only looks bright for that area.
So when you say status quo, do you think we should keep the mill levy, we should actually drop it down to 10.595
Yes,
from
I
where it
do.
is now? Okay, all right.
Or are you talking about leaving the status quo the same, the process the same in terms of adjusting the mill every year?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so I think he's referring to leaving the process to adjust the mill.
Okay, so
the
are you
same.
in favor of going up to our maximum to 11.055 then to go up that high? Is that what
I
you're?
am, yes.
You are, okay, all right, I misunderstood you. Okay. All right.
You know,
And Martina?
and like Dave, I mean, I've thought about this an awful lot. And I'm the flip flopper on it, depending on how I see it. You know, in one regard, you know, the district's budget is going up regardless, right? Just because, you know, there's a pretty substantial increase in the budget, regardless of what we do. And so that's a benefit to the district. I think that PFA can make really good use of the money. I mean, I think there's a demonstrated need there. I think there's an opportunity to get caught up maybe a little bit in terms of some of the deferred maintenance. And you have a chance to do that. And I have no doubt that would be responsibly spent. Again, I think we're all looking for a little bit more information on how or where or what the choices are that go with that. But it's not going to be wasted money. And the impact on an individual home. I mean, really the difference that you're looking there is if HH passes, you know, the district, you know, revenue goes up, you know, per home, per $600,000 home, you know, by $95. You know, if we up the mill, it goes up to 114.
It's
So
$18.86.
Yes,
And that's from the base mill levy, not from the 10,824 it is now. So the actual cost, increased cost to an individual home would be less than that.
so the difference per home, you know, is
Negligible.
is very small when we're looking at, you know, on the other hand, right, that's the way sort of taxes work. I mean, everybody pays just a tiny bit in, right? And then it's sort of a death by 1,000 cuts. And so, so, you know, we need the money. We could make good use of the money, right? It is the way that our process has been set up in terms of trying to stay balanced with that revenue allocation formula. I mean, I get all that and I could support all of that. You know, I think Dave makes a fair comment, you know, that if there's already a big increase in terms of our constituents, maybe their interests, in their financial interests, you know, if we take those as paramount, we shouldn't be voting for the increase. I think if you ask voters, you know, if they would be willing to support their resources and their response and their ability to provide fire protection at a cost of an extra $18 per $600,000 home, I bet the majority of them would say yes. And that's sort of where I'm leaning. Really long answer to, I'm not sure, probably leaning towards adjust the mill.
We're not asking them though. I mean,
we're not asking.
That's, yeah.
I mean, that's part of
You're
our
saying-
responsibility
you're
of
right,
being
if we did-
elected, right?
If we did ask them, I think you're right, we'd probably, but we're not asking them.
Right, but we're charged with representing their interests.
That's true.
And so I think
That's
their
right.
financial interests would be, you
Yeah,
know, be,
That's
you know, be really fiduciary, you know, limited, you know, but if their interests in terms of, and I'm speculating, obviously, you know, but it is our job as elected officials to try to represent our constituents, and that's what I'm trying to balance, is their financial interests versus what I think perhaps their support would be for a minimal increase to support PFA. So, long answer.
Martina?
Yes. Will.
Yeah, I just want to yes and what Martina's saying on, you know, as a district, if the district is operating on its own, it can't do near what PFA Collective does. And I think that's part of the equation for me in my head. You know, I put on my other hat where I was an assistant chief in another district that was around a big city and the things that we couldn't do. So when I look at the value the district gets from being part of PFA, I mean, it's not a one-to-one. There's an exponent there for me. And so I think going back to justifications and the data being brought forward to what we would actually do with that money and where we would gain, you know, facilities are a huge part. And I see and we all know the expenses that are going to continue to go up on that. And so, you know, is it going to get cheaper over time? I doubt it. So there's certain things that $1 today is better than $1 in 10 years by a lot. And so, yeah, I think it's you know, when I think about what are we actually giving to our constituents, who admittedly, most of them don't want to know how we do our business. They just want to know it gets done. That it, in my mind, is good money to be able to make sure we're funding the beyond the base. And I get it on the tax rates going up everywhere. I do. But for the amount of money being presented, the differential, I mean, I agree. I think most people would say, yes, I want that money to be spent because it's relatively small and we get a lot for it. Thank you. That was long-winded.
If I could add, when I was working with all of you on pre-discussion, like history and how I budget, I gotta say, I think up at SDA, I was a little concerned about how I'm gonna message this if we got some pushback from constituents. And I gotta tell you that I think I'm very comfortable with what I'm seeing with PFA needs. The one employee that's assigned, you know, to do the work on behalf of you, that of coming to you with that recommendation. Typically, I would be one to lean on flat, but I strongly feel that this is something that I'd like to see the board strongly consider.
I mean, what it comes down to for me, I looked at, I compared A to C. So if HH fails, I'm on that same page, 237. If you compare the difference of cost to a $612,000 home, in example A, if it fails, the only part we have control over is the mill part, right? All the other property tax increases are out of our hands. We're talking $6.56 in a year. It's 50 cents a month. I think I could safely say my neighbors would pay that. And if HH passes, that goes up to, well, it doesn't really even go up to $18 more because we're already at a higher mill levy than the base. So it's less than $18. So I'm kind of going with my gut instinct as a homeowner, as a resident, as elected official for the district, that I think my neighbors would approve that if they saw our needs, our capital needs. So I assume we'll need to do a vote on this.
No, I think I just need direction.
You just need direction? Okay, no
Just
vote.
need direction like we did last time.
Direction would be, I would say go for the maximum the 11.055. Pardon me? Oh, your hand was up?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I thought you were, I thought you were gonna correct me.
I
Yeah,
was
go
gonna
ahead,
correct
Derek.
you. No, and I think, it is a difficult decision to make, especially like you represent the district, kind of to piggyback what Bill had said. One thing that had just recently came out, the Wildfire Mitigation Management Commission that was put together by the United States Fire Administrator came out and really focused on that interface of where the residential meet the wildland urban interface. It's not wildland fire, it's more like urban in the mix of wildland and how we're better prepared for that. And, I go back to the fire we had next to your house and you think would the neighbors be willing to spend an extra $6 or $10 to have, more robust protection when you have that impinging fire, red flag day and winds? And then us as direction, how do we utilize those funds? And I think we definitely show a correlation that we're improving our response and protection to that interface zone. And whether it comes down to, we could show like what the funds were used for to really protect that district interface. Is something we definitely can do as an organization, how we bolster that to say like, these funds went specifically for this, our stations that are on the outskirts to provide, more coverage and protection, whether it's equipment or anything else that goes along with providing that service. But that's gonna be our focus the next 5-10 years with the climate change and how that interface and how we're best suited to address those challenges.
I think that when we went to the voters to get that change, though, again, it was to de-Gallagherize and to maintain that level of funding we had in 2019. It wasn't to, okay, now we have more capital needs. We didn't get the voters' approval to do that, in my opinion. So that's why I'm coming from. Oh, we should keep that mill levy down. We didn't get voter approval to increase the mill levy because we need more equipment or we need more facilities, maintenance or more equipment. If we need to do that, I don't know whether we should go to the voters or not, but it seems like that's what we should do. That's my opinion.
So Dave, if I can propose this, we were looking at what the large amount of assessed value that was coming in because of the growth. And I would have, without any consideration of lowering the mill, presented the higher mill, because when my budget book, when you look at that adjustment would have set the mills originally at that 11,055, assuming HH passes or fails. That would have been the number. Then there was discussion because it was so large because of the growth that can we reduce it? And that's where that talk really came in of that other option. I would have, in a normal legislative year, proposed to this board the higher mill, because that was what your adjustment is based on the ballot measure back in 2019. There would have been no consideration at all of these other examples of lowering the mill because of the shock of the growth that the district has seen. The 44% is seen, statewide. So I just want to kind of put that out there, that there was this talk about, holy cow, that's such a large number. But if we took HH out of the equation, I would have presented 11,055 as that calculation of how I budget anyway. As I saw the ballot measure approved back then, of what it was designed to do with that residential assessment rate from the assessor's office continuing to dive. That's the adjustment of you capturing what you would have been back if everything was all apples to apples back in 2019. I hope I painted that picture, but there was discussion, what would it look like if we set it at base? And that's why those other examples came about. For a little context of that.
The normal sort of the status quo, the typical normal process would have been to go up.
Correct.
That's what would have been that's sort of the default would have been to go up, and just because now with the new assessments, there's so much more value. And there's such an increase in what we're taking in. The question is, you know, should we do what we would normally do, or sort of in respect of financial conservatism or whatever you want to call it, should we lower the mill?
Yeah.
So I think that, but the status quo would be to go up.
Well, I don't think our job here today is try to change each other's minds as much as assess. I don't want you to feel like everybody's like, well, Dave, here's why you should, you know.
Right.
So we've laid our opinions out on the table. Patty, I think, I mean, if I can summarize what I've heard 4 board members say they're comfortable with the higher mill, and
3.5.
3.5, and 1.5 say that they're, you know, we still will have a final vote on the budget, so there's time, but what I'm hearing right now is we have a majority of board members that are giving Patty direction to prepare the budget with the higher number, and I need to see if that's okay. If it's not, we could do a formal vote.
That's what I'm hearing.
Well,
Okay.
if
Can
I
I make
can-
one more comment?
If I can clarify that it's not the higher number, it's to go ahead and adjust the mill. Because the higher number is all dependent on if HH fails or passes.
Right, well, adjust the mill, yeah, but you're adjusting it, you're not taking it down to the base. Because that would be the other thing. So in that regard, you're using the higher mill number, adjusting it, so,
And Bill
Anyway.
was gonna add some.
pardon me?
Bill was.
Yeah, Bill, you had a comment?
Yeah, I did. And, you know, and yes, ending for Dave on his perspective. You know, I know in another district I was on the board, we surveyed our district members to get a consensus of what they wanted, if they were where they were on the fence, basically. And if we found through survey that Dave was correct, they voted, they feel strongly they voted a certain way, then maybe we should pay attention to that. And if we want to have the latitude to do it a different way, we take that forward at another time for them to approve. I'm just putting that out there as validating that, you know, Dave has a point.
And if we do that, we'll be at 25% versus the city's 75%. And again, that makes us more out of balance. We're already gonna be out of balance, even without that. We'll be at 24%.
Right, I mean, the change between
Yeah.
the choice of mill, like, I mean, we're out of balance regardless.
That's true.
So,
We'll be worse out of balance, I guess, is what
yes, yes,
I'm trying to point out
right.
or make us understand. Hopefully I understand it all.
All right, do we have more discussion? Patty, do you have direction? You feel like you got the direction you needed?
I feel like I have the direction to budget with an adjustment.
All right, okay. All right, we'll move on to the next item.
Thank you.
Item number 9, which is consideration to approve resolution 23-06, which is opposition to Proposition HH.
You are a apolitical body, and this is a hot topic political measure, to say the least. At SDA, this breakout session was packed. It's on everyone's mind as it really impacts districts' ability to fund themselves. It's up to you on whether you want to support or oppose this resolution. You are an SDA member, a Special Districts Association member. But I just want you to know, when I start seeing different support or non-action, it means it's political to me. This really won't go anywhere other than you're just taking a position to say that we don't want our ability to fund ourselves to pass, whether, you know, your personal philosophy is. Again, your 2 critical responsibilities as district board is the emergency services to the district and funding. So open it up and looking for your consideration, if you guys want to take a position on this or not. It doesn't really impact budget. It came across as some material as a district that I wanted to put before you for discussion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Comments from board members?
Does this fit into our, last meeting, we got this, maybe it was in the authority, we got this reminder about political action and what we can do as individuals. So does this fit in? Excuse me, does this fit into that? I mean, wouldn't we be going against what? we
This
said?
is a resource, Dave, that came right off of SDA website. And would not be the first time that you, as a body, have opposed a ballot measure. I think it was in 2021 that you sent a letter to some legislators about governing powers on districts. I think it had to do with metro districts. So it's not the first time, but you are a political quasi form district. So again, it's up to you. I just wanted to chime in there that this is directly off of SDA's website.
And SDA they've come public with their opposition, correct?
Oh, yeah,
And they've been lobbying against it.
correct. You know, and in all fairness, the Colorado Professional Firefighters Association, they have lobbyists down there and they're supporting it. Chief can talk about the Colorado State Fire Chiefs. I think they're taking no position. But as an SDA member, SDA is asking for you to consider opposition. Again, it's political.
Which to me would almost speak to consideration of not wading into that. I mean, because I feel like, especially with different organizations, that we are, that have similar interests to us, choosing different sides of this particular issue. And like Patty says, it's political. And even if we try to not make it political and really just think about the district's impact, I think it could just be viewed as political. And it's so incredibly complicated, the potential for unintended consequences, it really feels like a big jumbled mess. And I'm not really sure if our resolution would really have a profound impact on anyone. And therefore taking a position on something that's really political, I don't know what we're sort of gaining from that. And I think I'd almost rather stay out of it, but that's my opinion.
Well, I think you're right. We belong to the SDA as an associate member, and they've already taken a stance on it. I don't necessarily think that we should take any more action other than either we support what they're doing or we're not. But, that's why we belong to those organizations, to them to study it and then
Speak on our behalf.
I agree.
We need to do anything myself.
I'm not hearing, and Bill, you agree? Is there anybody that feels strongly that we should be taking a position? Otherwise, we can just table it and stay neutral.
No, I mean, the people described this at the SDA conference didn't understand it themselves. I mean, I couldn't vote for something that I had to defend to a constituent. I mean, there's a lot here that people don't understand. So,
If this were to go public and then we had to defend our position,
We make you the
We have to explain
spokesperson.
it.
I think Mike's right. We let SDA carry the ball on this one. On the other hand, I'm kind of like you, half and half on this because, I have a personal opinion on this thing and I just, I don't know. Anyway, I think it's the right thing to do. Just let SDA carry the ball and let it go at that.
Okay, sounds like everybody's on the same page with that.
Are you okay with that, Patty?
I sure am. They're your lobbyists.
All right,
Okay.
that was easy. Well, Easy, but that was clear, I guess. All right. Okay, we are down to briefing papers, Fire Chief's monthly report. All right.
I have a follow-up since Martina's here. So a question that came up last time was, it was our number of crashes more than other communities. So pulled data from Fort Collins Police. They had 330 crashes in 2022. So the rate is 1.9% of 1,000 people will be involved in a traffic accident in Fort Collins. Our data for 2022 was 445 accident injuries, but that includes the district too. So I don't know if there's like a list of comparable communities, and I figured you'd be the one to see like where we fall in there, where to look for those resources.
It's incredibly difficult to draw sort of an equitable comparison among communities because of the difference in the way that crash reports are completed and submitted. And really the only consistent way to compare one community to another is by the number of fatalities, because those are required to be reported in a certain way to the federal government through what they call the FARS, which is the Fatal Accident Reporting System. And so really the only way that you can compare one community to another is based on their fatalities. And the tough part is, I mean, and would like to think, or luckily, I mean, those numbers are relatively small. And so there's a lot of random variation in those numbers. I mean, like we're seeing in this year, certainly with a high number of fatalities in Fort Collins. But that's the best way to do the comparison. And then you can do that comparison, you know, fatals per population. You can do that fatals per vehicle miles traveled. You can do fatals per, I mean, you can look at a lot of different ways to compare those fatal numbers. In the past, I mean, Fort Collins every year does that comparison with some similar communities, some in Front Range, you know, Longmont and Greeley and others, you know, and then other communities across the country that are similar in size and makeup of Fort Collins. And in the past, at least, that comparison has come out that Fort Collins is generally, you know, a average or a little bit better than average. Certainly not at the top, but certainly not at the bottom either. And so that was with last year's numbers. Certainly this year, I mean, again, there's been a high number of fatalities in the city. And so, you know, we're not going to trend as well, you know, when they look at that for next year. So, but yeah, in general, those crash numbers are going up. Population is also going up. Vehicle miles traveled is also going up. And so, you know, how that's comparing to population vehicle miles traveled is and it is incredibly difficult to compare, because some communities, you know, use a possible injury crash and they don't call that an injury. Other communities say a possible injury crash is an injury crash. And so you start comparing those and it gets all jumbled up statistically really quickly. So
Appreciate that.
numbers are up, always a concern, right? Always a concern, especially this year, motorcycle fatalities.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, again, those can be some, right? Can be high-speed fatalities. It's harder to see motorcyclists. I mean, sort of understanding what's going on is pedestrians are a challenge. So
The important thing is that and I guess it's probably not our responsibility, but our preventative actions being taken. I mean, you can probably answer that
I can
too.
answer that too, right? Fort Collins has an adopted Vision Zero plan,
Yeah.
which is really sort of the idea of trying to you know, vision a scenario where you don't have any fatalities in a year. And they adopted their first Vision Zero plan just this last spring. I mean, there's some specific steps that are in there. It is, you know, that Vision Zero plan is, you know, really focused on vulnerable road users, pedestrians and bicyclists and motorcyclists. You know, there's sort of this accompanying document that's all the statistical analysis about the crashes. And both of those have really specific actions in them. For instance, one being that the top 10 intersections where there's more crashes than what would be expected should be reviewed as a safety audit in Fort Collins. And that project is now underway, for instance. So there's a citywide review going on of the left turn phasing of how signals work with left turns, whether that should be a red arrow or whether it should be a flashing yellow arrow. Citywide comprehensive review of left turn phasing to see if there's locations where that should be changed to reduce the number of left turn crashes. So there's a lot of efforts, but
It's always a challenge.
I appreciate that.
Yep.
So there's no simple answer for that.
Yeah, yeah, I was just saying, okay,
It's hard.
yeah.
It's hard.
Thank you for the follow-up.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah.
The other one, compliance with UC Health, we're in the high 90s, 100%, get out in the district area. Calls continue to be steadily consistent. Our Q-hit survey responses were still over 40% and 98% satisfaction, which is nice. And then mention this to the PFA board, our mobilized system, which does our record management system, was completely offline. The company had a complete failure, so we weren't able to fulfill any quarter requests for almost 30 days, and now it's back up and running. So we communicated with everybody who had submitted data, asking for reports of the reason, and we're working on getting all those filled now, so.
But that's been fun.
Yeah.
More for Chief McGaffin staff, so they had to do a lot of workarounds.
Yeah, I'll bet.
And to keep the plan review process going too, because builders still need their plans reviewed, and
Sure.
that's.
Did they have a
system we
cyber issue or something? I
They
mean,
never
what
told us. That's what we're guessing, but they never told us,
Hmm.
so.
Wow.
But they also run a huge payroll side of IT, so all their payroll is down for large cities.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, so I mean, that's more of a significant challenge, having your payroll go down.
Yeah, yeah. So-
Yeah.
Okay, any questions for Chief on the monthly reports? Scott? All right, pretty straightforward, thank you. Okay, we will go to the planning calendar.
Thank you. Planning calendar, I have several of the Nexus study items on there. Again, we plan on having EPS do a presentation to the board. Again, a 5-year study. So please be prepared to see significant increases because our costs of providing services have increased. I didn't see anything in working with them that was shocking. I was planning for that. But just as a reminder to the board that the city will also be doing their impact study, and we kind of want them parallel like this. We don't want to lag behind and the city moves forward because it's really, really difficult to catch up. And I think the city had experienced that a little bit on not updating their IGA. So appreciate the consideration of there is going to be some increases because it is a 5-year difference between the last. What else did we add here? We have January 2nd for the special board meeting if HH is approved. And then we also put in a work session for February strategic plan. Did we have a date in mind? Is there a specific day that works better?
I have no idea. Offhand.
I second that.
Okay, maybe I can look at staff's calendars and then ping you guys and survey and see if we can find, it doesn't have to be at 10 o'clock. We can do it later in the day or we can do it early in the day, just depending. But I just didn't know if we had decided a day.
What if we did it on a different Tuesday morning in February?
Okay,
Like, and I'm just throwing that out there as,
I would say that you as the person working full-time,
Yeah.
compared to us other board members are a little more flexible, maybe you could,
I'm just thinking of
let us
staff generally, I mean, is used to having board meetings on Tuesday mornings.
Mhm.
We just did a different Tuesday morning, sure, an 8 a.m. or something, but you guys tell us what would work for.
okay, I'll work with the chief and make sure that we don't have any conflict with his schedule and set something.
Yep.
As long as we plan it, I'm good.
Okay. April 23rd, we have our tentative city council joint work session. And I think Chief has been working with somebody over at the city to secure that date. Special event for July 4th and then our September 11th. Otherwise, next month, I think we'll be looking to set the 2024 meeting dates. And I don't have anything further on that unless you see something glaring.
Thank you.
I think for the can I make one quick comment? Yes. For the 2024 meeting dates, I think, it might be worthwhile to wait and see until we get through the city council elections and then see who your city council liaisons are to the PFA board, because really the reason that our meetings are flip-flopped was because of Councilmember Francis's schedule constraints.
Yeah.
And
Oh, so
so
maybe we
still
could have the
would-
district go back to going
It
first.
would still make more logical sense for the district to go first and then to have the PFA meeting, you know, and the reason it was different was very specific. And so maybe we can wait through the November election, see if, once they make those council assignments,
That's a good
and
point.
then we can finalize our meeting dates.
We can at least get the date set, then the order we can always.
There you go.
Yeah.
Maybe that makes
Yeah.
sense. Yeah, so.
Sounds good.
Okay,
I want to skip, I apologize, Sean, I did not have your report on my agenda cover, so I skipped over it. So I'm gonna go back and do the community risk reduction wins.
Yeah, I don't think that it's a report that we need to continuously address every week or every month like this. I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood where it came from. So obviously, most of the data that we produce downstairs is data, it's numerics, it's something that we can show quantifiable measures, like the number of inspections we did, the number of plans that we've done. But a lot of that doesn't show the work behind what we do. So we've added this, what we call the community risk reduction wins. It's just a list of things that we put in there that just shows work efforts by the individuals within the division and things that they're working on. Some of them are, I mean, they're all pretty self-explanatory if you read through them, but it talks a lot about the community outreach program and what some of the grants and fundings and donations that they've received, plus the number of followers in social media. Then you move down into like the fire inspection services, fire protections. That's going to be all of our plan reviewers, people in those fields. Some of the things that they talk about in there is like the Hewlett Packard facility and some of the pre-planning stuff that we're doing there. I mentioned in the board meeting earlier that we have people like HP, Broadcom, and Anheuser-Busch all connecting with what's called Bricer. It's a third-party company that we use that helps manage and monitors their requirements for such things as a sprinkler inspection or a hood and duct inspection. And they hold them accountable to make sure that it gets done. It's a really forward-thinking thing for Bricer and us to kind of put this together. We are the first company they've ever done that within the nation. And so it's different for them to see private groups coming into that and then managing it with them versus fire department. So super exciting to be working on the front edge or the cutting edge with Bricer on that. And it will only help us by slowing down the amount of people we have to have monitoring these big giant buildings, these big private companies. So one of the things, it took one of my AFMs, most of the month in meetings, taking care of that and getting that created. So that's what this is just to kind of show you a snapshot of some of the things that they do outside of the numbers. So if you ever have any questions on any of this stuff, you can please reach out to me at any time during the month, and I can easily go back and talk you through it or explain anything. I don't think every month I need to sit up here. I just want to kind of define what it was so that you guys knew what it was, so that you can, when you come across it, you'd be like, oh, okay, this is what this is.
Sean, are you still actively involved in review of construction at CSU?
We are, yeah. So we work with the IGA through CSU. So we look at all of their plans and go through everything with them. And we're actually working with them right now on an entire different scope, which is their special events and what they're doing with those, because we don't have as good of a grasp on regulations with some of their special events, such as big concerts and stuff like that. So we're working really well with Ken Katana over there, and a new employee called, her name's Jennifer Wright, that I'm meeting with actually tomorrow to kind of introduce some of our thoughts and stuff.
So are they still continuing to sprinkle their buildings and everything?
Yeah, they follow everything within the 2021 IFC still. So they adopt essentially what we adopt and enforce is what they do. So
Good.
one of the biggest things that they don't do is we don't have sprinkler technician, like they have their own sprinkler technicians and their own fire alarm technicians. So when a building goes into alarm there, we respond, once we clear the incident, say that there's not a fire, they just take it back over. We don't have to wait on scene for an action technician or anything because they have a 24-hour service for themselves. So
That's working pretty good then.
yeah, it's a great relationship.
That's a big improvement.
Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Sean, are you working on certification? Do you have that responsibility?
For myself or for?
No, I know I'm using the wrong words. Our SIPC
Accreditation.
accreditation,
Yeah.
thank you.
So accreditation runs.
That's your,
No, that's not me. I mean, a lot of the data comes out of my division. Who
Okay.
runs and forwards it? It's gonna be Chief Burston and Haley are the two that are kind of leading that front right now.
okay,
So when we get to accreditation, we start talking, quantifiable measurements and whatnot. A lot of that data gets pulled from for my division, so
Okay,
I work with them, but I don't run that program.
He's been really lobbying for it though, to be in charge of it.
I just got all the
It's
spare
not
time,
back there.
all the
Yeah.
spare time on my hands, I'm just looking for things to do.
well, we haven't heard anything about it for, seems like a long time, so I just want, we're still working on it.
Oh, yeah.
We're still,
Yeah, it's a monthly
Always.
process. So we go
Awesome.
over all the data, do program evaluation, then Haley and I are working on the end of the year where we review all the programs to make sure that we're hitting our
Okay.
outcomes if we have to adjust or adapt
Okay.
anything. So
are we looking to hire somebody? I mean,
for,
to replace Sean or?
yes,
We
yep,
are?
yep.
Okay,
So we didn't have a battalion's chiefs list, and then we're just looking at what that whole process looks like. What's the best position for that role?
gotcha.
Yep.
Okay,
I really like this information. I mean, I just think
Yeah.
it's really important. It's incredibly important work that you do, and I really like the fact that you can highlight it and acknowledge and recognize the people that are doing that work.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. The idea behind it was to give them an identity of what they're doing and let them
Yeah.
show what they're proud of. So that's kind of what started this.
Right, and so,
Good.
you know, I concur with you that I don't know if you really need it like on a monthly basis, because that's just more time and effort for you to have to put it together. But I wonder if there's a way to sort of highlight some of the, you know, the really big things that might come out of it. And I don't know if that works, put it into the chief's monthly report or, you know, something where we can still sort of get the gist of that without you having to put together a
Yeah.
whole memo every month. I'm.
This is not difficult. This is collected anyways, where we do it within ourselves for our culture down here. So that we do this anyway, so that we capture this information so that amongst our division or our programs, they hear what the other people's successes are. And that's captured through our executive downstairs. So she keeps and maintains this running list, and then she just throws it together and we just throw it into the board package. So
Right.
actually putting it together takes no time at all. What I'm speaking of, we'll have it every month because we collect it anyways. I don't know if I need to actually come up here and tell you the
Oh,
same
and talk
story
about it.
every time.
You can
so.
embed it in the chief's monthly
Yeah.
report, maybe, and just, it'll be
Excellent.
part of that
We'll leave
whole.
it there.
Sure.
And part of it for us, it works out well when we get to the end for the annual report. Now we have all this for every month of all the activities we've done to do a good summary.
Right.
Versus like starting in January, now we gotta do a look back 12 months. We've tracked all that data, so.
There it is.
Yeah, so no, I think I'm looking for ways to make sure that we can acknowledge and recognize and appreciate the work that you guys do without.
Yeah,
Having
no,
an extra-
I think it's
extra
great.
time.
I did skip out and I just wanted to introduce, if she's not in here right now, but Ally is our new front desk girl. So we have Sarah who's been here for quite a while now, and Ally is our new permit tech that just got hired. So as you walk out, you'll see that we're back up to 2 at the front desk there, which is a huge relief for us. And then we also have Russ, who's one of our new inspectors he's out in the field right now, but so we are hiring some positions. We have another plan reviewer that we just hired. She's going through the background process right now. Hopeful start date is early November. And then we have a couple other positions that are still open that we're trying to get filled, including Sarah's that is opened up here just last week. So a lot of change, but all for good.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Thanks, Sean.
All right. Thank you. All right, well, our last couple items were just some correspondence, which I assume everybody had a chance to read. I don't know if there are any questions on that. If not, I believe we are through the agenda.
I had one thing, I
Okay.
forgot to mention at the PFA, but the letter we got from Newark Department of Public Safety. Anytime there's a firefighter fatality, I send a letter to the family and the fire chief. And that started from my previous organization. I had my first firefighter line of duty death in 2009, Terrence Freeman, he was 37 years old. And I started getting letters of outpouring from all across the world and shared them with the family. And it really resonated with his wife and kids, like to see that support, and just something continued on ever since 2009. So sometimes I write back saying thank you, but that's like everyone that there is, we send a letter out to the
Nice.
family and the chief, so.
Yeah, well, clearly they appreciate
Yep.
this
Yeah.
gentleman here very much. So
Yeah. It's important.
nice.
Well done.
Yeah.
Bill, before we close, anything from you?
No, good meeting, good process. We're working the plan. Honored to be here.
Okay, great. All right. I think we're ready to take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye. All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank
Thank you.